particularly to the idea that people might have questions when they went away and they wanted to come back too. So in this session I think we are going to do a couple of things. One is, just move that along a bit, we're going to have a bit of a quick recap, but most of all this is a context for conversation, and conversation can be done in a couple of ways. It can be done by unmuting your microphone, and if you want to do that you should be able to do that yourselves using the box on the right hand side, or you can use the chat window. So what I'm going to do is to run through very briefly some of the things we spoke about in that online webinar, but I encourage you in a few minutes to be in a position either to jot things in the chat window or to just speak to us about the issues that matter to you in terms of this, taking this work forwards, because this is an early stage, but all my sense is that actually if we are going to be having this conversation in a month or two and it's the same conversation, we will have we'll be chasing our tails with it. So what we talked about on the earlier call was this notion of entitlement, about individual support, and everyone has a named mentor. In this tutor, we're actually taking a mentoring role, and our job is to support you, but we will also be assessing the final portfolios and giving feedback as we go along, hence that third point around formative and summative feedback, and also to facilitate collaboration within institutions but also across institutions. We've got a mix of, thanks Nikki, I'll come back to that question in a second about if people don't know who their mentor is, and I'll just identify those for different colleagues as we go. If you're in that position, you're not sure who your mentor is, just jot a note in the chat window, and I'll update colleagues as we go forwards. And this notion of peer collaboration, which is about us working collaboratively, and I'll say something about that as well in a minute or two. But that's our first model. Here we are, let me just check. I'm trying to resist doing too much of this on the hoof, but I will, I think, here we are, you're down as having me, but I will check that. I'll check that out. So the system fails at the first level. Okay. So we need to check on mentors. It may be that what we can do is simply send a further list around identifying who mentoring with whom, and that might be an action out of this call. So individual support, facilitated collaboration, and feedback. Both elements of the individual and the collaborative are things we'll talk a bit about today if you want to. Just to say a little bit, welcome to Jean who's just arrived, just to say a little bit about what I think our job is. Our job is a supportive role, it seems to me, initially. Ultimately we have some assessment requirements to meet, and so we want to engage with you so you tackle the assessment tasks in a satisfactory and appropriate way. We're going to be doing, I think, a little bit, depending on how you do, of progress chasing. Later on in the slide I've written nagging. I don't really mean to say nagging. My mother came into my head at that point, so I do apologise. But one of our jobs is to try and maintain a sense of consistency, engagement, and to make sure that we're on the appropriate pace. Jim, could you just put your mic off for a moment? It's just picking up lots of other sounds as well. Thank you very much. I should have said that at the start, colleagues. We'll try and mute microphones as we go, because this stage anyway, and put those back on at an appropriate point. If you're getting interference on sound, let us know and we'll switch some of the webcams off. But at the minute it's good to obviously see faces if we can. Okay, so our jobs then, in no particular order: helping you engage with assessment tasks, reminding you that you should be engaging with the assessment tasks and with practice improvement above all, because this is a way of recognising improvements in practice, convening online support activities, individual discussions with you, but also some collaborative things as well. And last but not least, related to assessment and the portfolio building, providing some feedback on how things are progressing. If you haven't had a look, please have a look at the CRA site. You'll find the manual for the award is located there. You'll find a range of resources located there, and some, including some that you can simply view online. You haven't got to go to library, resource centre, whatever things are called these days, and see if you can get hold of stuff. And you'll find the scaffolded portfolio pages, and Janet may want to say a bit about those in a minute or two. And we'll be putting online the introductory briefing, which some of you I know listened to and were indeed participants in. So there'll be a range of resources online, and of course we talked about feedback for all as being an important element. We talked in that first meeting about assessment tasks, and we gave some indicative information in terms of when we thought the timeframes would fit. They may not fit with you, but we'd advise you really to think about tackling these, certainly the first two of these, at your earliest convenience. We don't anticipate those would necessarily be shared with colleagues within your institution unless you're in a context. So timeframes in mind which would allow us as a cohort to get to a process of summative assessment and feedback by January. Subsequently, we've had a discussion with colleagues at Seda, which was led by John Peters, and John may want to say a word about this in a minute, but I picked out three things that I wanted to come back to on that. One was we haven't included, and we don't include in the handbook, any indicative word length for the plan element, and Seda colleagues were suggesting 500 words would be a sort of appropriate indicative limit for that. We talked about the importance of collaboration, the idea about a cohort model, the idea about working through together roughly in equal steps, and I think the indicative time frame sticks to reflect that and to allow for that. And we talked about what happens if people don't submit on time, and I think our position there is that of course there will be an opportunity for late submission, but all our experience indicates that the further the time passes, the harder it gets to go that final lap. So our aim is to maintain the cohort model and the indicative time frame. If you can't meet it, then of course we will meet you halfway in that context, but our primary focus from the off, try and do as far as possible you to meet that time frame, and accreditation comes to fruition as far as we can by the December deadline. Let's just go back to the final slide. We talked about collaboration. There will be two fairly early opportunities for online working, and one will be led or presented by John Peters around the significance of in the current context of PhD, and the second we already have in the bank, but Janet will be facilitating an online session around institutional perspectives, which will give you something to bounce off in terms of your own perspective. And last but not least, your mentor will be in touch. Okay, David, you lost some of the audio, and I just picked that up. So, Dave, if you want to unmute your microphone, I'll turn mine off for a second. Just say what you missed and what other people may have missed, and I'll try and reprise it.
Okay, it was just when you were talking through the opportunities there, Rob, there's an awful lot of interference on the audio, so I can still hear audio, but I can't actually hear what you're saying. can't hear you at all now.
David, I can't hear Rob now either. This is Janet, by the way. Yeah, we're still having a lot of interference.
Yeah.
Rob, we're not getting anything from you at all.
Okay, how's that?
Better?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Never worked with
Curiously,
children.
Rob, I'm on the phone and I can hear you clearly.
How weird. Okay.
Yes.
I'm standing on a mountain in a stiff breeze. Fabulous. I wish I was, John. Thank you. Okay. Let's try and reprise that bit, perhaps with everybody in mind. But David, if you're still with us, and it looks like
I am.
You are. Okay. David, just say what you said again, and I will try and keep body, soul and technology together and come back and try and reprise the bits that people weren't getting.
Okay, it's just when you were talking through this slide around the further opportunities, the online opportunities, and that's when you started sounding like you were in a stiff breeze on top of a mountain. So I didn't really catch any of what you were saying there.
Okay. Do I need to go back a couple of slides then? You're fairly still getting interference on phone line, which, Alison, I'm not sure if that's for yourself. David, can you just do you want me to go back a couple of slides and just say a bit again then?
No, it's just this one slide. Just this one slide.
The one that's on now?
Yes.
Okay, fine. What I was saying, I think this, if it is the only mic I can see that's likely causing a problem is with yourself, Alison. So if you can hear us, and the phone people can just ensure their phone connections are not causing the windy appearance. That's brilliant. Something's happened to that, so it may have. If the windy thing has gone away, it was the phone line that was causing it. Okay, Dave, my apologies. Okay, this slide, colleagues, is really about picking out the next steps. Some of those next steps you want to ask about, but I was picking out two opportunities for joining together online. One that John's doing the session on, as he's put in the chat, on why this matters now. And Janet is going to reprise a collection of resources that we made available on institutional rethinking on personal tutoring, and we'll run that as a facilitated session so that people will have the opportunity to understand policies in other institutions and maybe use that to inform their own thinking in addition to the policies in their own. Sometimes quite good to step outside, and we've got some more interference there. And I don't know why, but I think if I turn my microphone off, maybe it would be helpful if someone else tries to pick up the chat in case my mic is actually creating the problem. John or Janet, do you want to pick things up for a minute or two, and I'll try and sort things out here.
Hi, can people hear me all right?
Yes, you're fine.
Shall I talk a little bit about the website and the scaffolded web pages? You would have to let's have a minute. Let me get the screen up with the CRA website on. I've got too many things open here, that's the trouble. Right, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay.
Yeah, you're the new presenter, so you need to share your screen, I think.
I was trying to get the website up before I shared my screen, that's all. So I'm just waiting for the CRA website to open up and then I'll share my screen. Well, I can show it now. Okay. Just to double check everybody knows where to look, this is the Recording Achievement website that you're all familiar with, and the tutoring pages are under the Higher Education tab. Everybody okay so far? So you'll see on the tutoring site we've got these 6 sections at the moment, which are still being developed. The policy and practices section I see as being quite helpful for you when you're thinking about the first task, which is the definition of your own role, or talking about your own role in your own institution, because it would be helpful to have a look at least 2 or 3 other institutions, maybe ones that you think are quite like your own, to see how the role is defined in that institution. So on this page we've got a lot of links, certainly not all that are available, but a good number of links. I think there's another page of them as well. Actually, we'll put some more up, but that's a start. And most of those go directly to university sites which give the policy for personal tutoring or academic advising, depending on what terminology is used in that institution. Sometimes addressed to students, but usually addressed to staff who have to fulfill the role. There's often guidance documents or handbooks or policy documents on those web pages. So have an explore there. The Development Award and the handbook you can see obviously on the right, but I'm going to go next to the portfolio pages. And what we've tried to do here is go a little bit beyond the information in the handbook. So if you look at task 1, these open as Word documents, and they repeat the task. This is from your handbook, but they give you a bit of extra guidance on how to think about this. Now obviously this is something that you can discuss with your mentor, but you see we've said here to help you think about your role, compare the practice in your own institution with at least one other institution, and I would suggest having a browse and looking at 2 or 3. And again, we've talked about ideas and models from the literature, and the guidance suggests that as well as policy documents you can look at the resource section of the CRA website. So that is the first task and how it relates to the, or how we hope the website will support it. Close that down a minute. And we've tried to do that for each of the tasks, and you'll see that, again, you've got the plan, do, review cycle. We would like to know from you, this is something that mentors can ask mentees, how you want to produce the portfolio. Some of you will have an e-portfolio system at your institution which you can share with people outside the institution, and if you're familiar with that you might want to use that. Some of you might want to use free tools like, the most obvious one is Google Sites that you can do a portfolio on. Others will be perfectly happy just to do a set of Word documents or PDF pages linked to each other and send those make those available via email. And all of those are certainly permissible in this pilot. We're learning as we go along, and we may in the future say we'd like you to do it on such and such a tool, but we're certainly not saying that at the moment. So, just to recap, you know where the portfolio pages are on the CRA web page. Just to go backwards, they're in the tutoring section, and the tutoring section is under higher education, which you can get to on the tab on the first page of the CRA website. So I'll stop talking for now. Are there any questions on that? Is that clear? Yeah, I've got my chat open. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for the feedback that people put into the chat. Thanks to Teresa for potentially adding very helpfully to our focus around the development of student well-being, paying attention to student well-being and the impact on academic performance. That will be really helpful. Yeah, really enlarging the list would be great, Nick, if you're happy to. If colleagues are happy to suggest things to put into that frame, we'd be very happy to add those in, particularly if they're available directly online. Janet's talked a little bit about the assessment dimension and the website, and we're going to add, as we said, if Teresa sends those over, we will make those available. It'd be great if it was, as far as possible, a resource built by the community, started by us but built by the community. So it'd be really good to have your feedback on that. And if we come out with a really strong set of resources that would be valuable to others as well, that would be a real plus. Other questions that colleagues want to pick up about what you understand is the nature of our endeavour and how we're going to go about it. Janet wants to just add something, so I'll get out of my way, and Janet's going to come back in with a bit of luck. Then I'll say a bit about, before we finish, if somebody reminds me, I'll say a bit about the arrangements for mentoring, because it looks to me from the feedback that some people know some stuff about who their mentor is and other people are less sure. Over to Janet.
Okay, I just remembered that I'd like you to all, for our sake as well as yours, to have a look at the resources section, which is very much under development. What we've done is roughly group resources as those which we think are suitable or primarily good for self-study, and those would be webinars, and you'll see that there's a webinar there called Fresh Thinking on Personal Tutoring and Academic Advising, which was the one I ran before Christmas with Exeter, Manchester and UCL on their different models. So that also is a good place to look at for looking at differences between institutions. Support documents and PowerPoint presentations. Then underneath that we've grouped a set of materials for workshops and training sessions. Many of you will be aware of these videos that we've had on the site for quite a long time, which you can freely use for training in your own institution, and each of those videos has a PDF transcript with it. What is new and an area that I'd really like to build up is this area at the bottom called case studies, which are simply materials. I'll show you an example. These were written, and I've used these extensively, for training staff and using them for role play. So each case study is a student. Here you've got the tutor's perspective and the student's perspective. So that's one kind. Oh, go away. Oops. Have I just come out? Can you still hear me? I've just lost the website again. I've clicked the wrong thing. Okay, that was all I wanted to say. Could you have a look at the resources and see if you could add things to what we've got there, because more stuff on that would be really useful. I'll go before I click something and take myself out of the meeting altogether.
Okay, thanks very much, Janet. Just going to pinch the presenter rights back, if that's okay. Colleagues, we said at the start that this is an opportunity for a conversation, and mostly so far, apart from the fact that the technology hasn't worked very well, it's been a conversation amongst the mentoring team. So I think this is an opportunity for people, if they want to unmute your microphones, which I think you should be able to do yourselves, and ask or speak about anything that would help you to make progress, but also help us to help you and help us to help each other. So there'll now follow a period of either intense conversation or monastic silence, but it's up to you and us how that goes. So I'll shut up at that point, and if people have questions either in the chat or in or verbally using the audio, it would be good to raise those at this point, and then yeah, we'll see where that takes us. Thanks. Thanks, Nikki, for the feedback. Hi, Kathy.
Teresa wants to know if there's a deadline for the first two tasks, and I think that's pretty loose, isn't it? It's between the mentor and the person involved, but the sooner they can get the plan written, the better.
Yeah, I'd emphasise that. It's nice that Teresa is thinking this might actually be a party. That's rather good. I'm recognising also the comments perhaps that others are making about needing to get started, and that is related, I think, the sorting ideas out, get things picked up, and I think it's important to move that forwards, and that relates to the next steps, which I'll come back to in a minute. Kathy's just raised the point about colleagues in the Sheffield Hallam group who have already got on with their first task, and I guess that, Janet, is one for yourself to work through in that context. Okay, yeah, it's a good question, Nikki, thank you. There are a group from Birmingham City working with ourselves. The Sheffield Hallam group is slightly different, given that how it works. There's a group at Lincoln as well, and clearly there are some opportunities where groups are staff from the same institution to have some local connectivities and some local support, and we'd want to encourage that. And where possible, it's not the case, yes, Chris, there's two from MMU indeed. That's a small group, but a very powerful one. Where possible, we've allocated mentors to institutions, not entirely, but we've tried to do some of that. So, for example, the Lincoln group has John, Sheffield Hallam is working with Janet, Birmingham City is working with Steve. So there's some opportunity for group conversations based on institutional groups, which could involve the mentor as appropriate. On that, colleagues, what I think would be helpful to do, given our differences in understanding, is I will circulate to the list, if that's okay, and you must say now if it isn't, I think, just an identification of who is working with whom. The alternative way of doing it is to circulate to people who've got particular mentors, just a note of who your mentor is. Maybe I'll do that to start with. We have been asked whether it would be okay for the list of participants and email contact details to be circulated through the group. I think probably we need your permissions to do that. I'll send a note around about that as well, and if there's any issues about that, you will have to let us know. I think based on what I understand from JISC, silence would indicate assent to that. So we'll just send a note around saying if this is going to cause you a problem, let us know. I can't think why it might, but I think it's not ours to share. Tracy, you're looking at that page in the handbook, which is in one of the appendices, and this was something we pulled in from another space. I'm just turning to that page. I think as it said there, it's an optional tool if you need line manager support. This, colleagues, is on page 16 of the handbook if you've downloaded it, and it's the work-based learning contract. Now this came from some work done, I think at Newman, but it could have been at Worcester, John. Do you want to say, John, do you want to say just anything about that, how that might be used, has been used, and how it might be relevant here?
Okay, can you hear me, folks? Yes, that was developed was partly to address issues around that the conversation had taken place between people on the course that we were running and their line manager about what support the line manager was going to provide. So it was a way of providing the people doing the course with an excuse for having the conversation with their line manager to say, well, I'm signed up for this as part of my continuing professional development. What can you do to help and facilitate this? And members of that course found it useful to have that opportunity to take it to their line manager and have that discussion. So really it's up to folk whether they think that would be useful to do that and helpful in their circumstances, to be able to say, well, I'm on this national programme, and they've suggested that we might need to have this conversation and sign up that you'll help me do it and I'll engage with it properly, as a way of having that conversation.
Okay, thanks very much, John. So, and while that's been going on, lots of people have assented to sharing all sorts of information and meeting up and all sorts, so that's really good. I will check with those who are not here that they're happy to have that information shared, and I note the interest both in face-to-face meetings, if that's doable, and also some online conversations, which we're certainly happy to facilitate. I think we've, just so that colleagues know, we've made a distinction, and I think it's in an earlier slide, possibly from the previous presentation, we certainly talked about it, that people should not feel they have to share stuff which in a sense they have evidence for, but if it got back to their institution might not be pleased that one of their staff colleagues had put it forwards as a position. So sharing would be great, supporting each other is fantastic, but we wouldn't want people to feel that all information that's in the portfolio is necessarily in the public domain. It will be for individuals to decide what it is they want to share with the wider group. And that may be a more constrained set of information than you might share with your mentor stroke assessor. Any other points people want to pick up? Side conversations going on. Okay, let me just...
That's behind me, sorry folks.
No worries. Let me just go back to that. Stop touching. Okay, let me just reiterate then a couple of things, partly as a result of the conversations we've just been having. I will just send a note round that would will confirm the mentoring arrangements, but I won't do anything other than do that at this stage. But your mentor should be in touch with you sooner rather than later if they haven't done already. Nikki, we can share institutions straight away. There are 13 involved, I think, and so that's something that will come out with the mentor confirmation information. We'll check with others who are not on the call, but they're happy to have contact details shared within the group only. And colleagues Janet and John, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to give an indication of when we're perhaps going to set up these additional online opportunities, so that people have a sense of, you know, when we might meet again for that kind of context, at the same time as we build some community sharing opportunities as well?
I'm happy to run a session in the next 2 or 3 weeks using the webinar that we've already done, not the whole thing because that would be tedious to have to listen to everything again, but just to summarize some of the things that came out of that, and really to lead a discussion on something that really interests me, which is you know, what are the key differences between the models that institutions are using, and how would we know if the model that we're using is as good as effective as, less good than the model down the road. So the sort of evaluation of these models. So maybe in about 3 weeks' time, would that be interesting for people? Josephine, you're not there. Yeah, I was going to say there are 2 from MMU. Okay, Rob, that's my commitment for you. I'll send round some possible dates.
Okay, that's great. So just to reprise that, Janet, to make sure I've got it right, and John's coming back in for May also. If people want to see the whole unexpurgated version, Janet, of the 3 presentations, they can do that directly. And
yes, they can go to the website and look at that, yeah.
Fantastic. So if you want to have a look at the 3 different institutional rationales in some detail, perhaps in advance of Janet's session, that information is available, but that session will be essentially around looking at the models, the key differences, and maybe exploring that in a facilitated discussion. And John, I think, will be potentially following that in fairly short order then, with again an online opportunity to present some ideas, but also to think through some ideas about the significance of why this matters, and maybe, I guess, following on from that, why this matters in the world, in the institutional world I'm in at present. What are the drivers, the levers, the interests, the handicaps, the disadvantages, the challenges, all of that stuff, and that hopefully will fit nicely into that task about review and plan, both of those. If there are other things you want the resources we've got to provide, in addition to those opportunities immediately, some confirmation of mentoring, some confirmation of institutions, and the expectation that your mentor will be in touch with you individually, if they haven't been already, please let us know. Okay. Thanks, Gabriel. The other Nottingham. We'll check the list. I think not, but we'll check the list. It's an interesting range of institutions. Anything else people want to talk about now? Or if we're about done, rather than they have the disappearance of 1,000 people from the attendees list, which tends to happen at the end of webinars, we can call a halt, and you can come back to us. Okay, fantastic. So John's asking there for appeal for information to him in advance, so that I guess that that focus session on why this matters now is not just John saying why he thinks it matters now, it's actually a range of contributions from all of us engaged in this work on why it's important now, personally, professionally, institutionally. Thanks, John. Okay, good stuff. Some yeah, inspiration, that's well, inspiration, that's good. Yeah, if we could bottle inspiration, that would be wonderful. Thanks, Gabriel, that's lovely. Okay, fabulous. So there will be some actions out of this, which I will get on with. Janet will circulate some possible dates. John, are you going to set a date? Is that too? It's not normally this way. Janet is normally the Stalinist, and she normally sets it. So, and John is more. Well, I'm normally the woolly liberal, I have to say. I'm not sure where John fits in on this continuum that Janet and I inhabit. But all of the things that we provide online will be recorded. So if you miss them, you can visit them again. You can visit them for the first time, and if you want to hear them again, you can do that too. Yeah, we'll have to see whether we're living out this sort of fully liberal stereotype. Somebody, okay, John is suggesting the 9th of May as a week for that contribution. To fit might mean to fit with whom. So if there are dates for you that you can't do, you need to let us know. Lunchtime, John, are you thinking? Okay. Okay. Janet's coming back with some possibilities. This is where we find it's not possible to get more than about 3 people together on lunchtime, but and it takes 3 hours to find the right date. This is the difficult bit. Okay. It's interesting that John said the week of 9th of May and Janet's picking up the previous week, so we may have 2 in fairly short order. There's for the 2 different events. Immediate reaction might be Tuesdays are a good date based on a sample of 1. Yeah, doodle poll would be good. Thanks, Janet. And some feedback already. Janet and John, in organising, if you need access to the chat, that will be available after we've converted the recording as well. That Monday is a holiday. No holidays on this programme. Okay, yeah, exactly. Work-life balance, yeah. You're in the wrong job, colleagues, but you knew that already. Okay. My sense is we're done. You can correct me if I'm wrong. John is paused, so he's clearly done. We will get on with the actions. Janet's going to talk to Kathy about that side of things. We'll circulate what we promised to circulate, and to reiterate, if you find resources that really need adding to our resources, let us know, and we'll make them available for the benefit of all. I nearly said for the greater good then, but I think that's a line out of Hot Fuzz, which is a film that if you're into, you know about, and if you're not into, we'll not have any content. Okay, thank you, colleagues. The greater good, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and we'll be in touch about dates. And